What's going on, everybody? Today is the day we are finally throwing a turbo on the old scratch and dent K-swapped MR-2 Spyder. I have everything you need here to properly and safely turbocharge an engine. As you can see, it's quite a bit of stuff, and I'm going to go through each and every piece that is required, how much all this costs, and then I'm going to throw it all on this car and hopefully we'll make some more power. So come along for the ride. Up first, I've already done some assembly, as you can see here. First we have the turbo, right? The whole reason we're doing all this stuff. This is a Gen 2 GT 3584 billet wheel, dual ceramic ball bearing, China's finest turbocharger. This one here came from old boosted boy Kyle. I only bought it from him mostly because it was the same price as it was everywhere else, and I'd rather send the money to someone here in America if I could. I then acquired the cheapest good old China racing manifold. It actually doesn't look too bad, I'm not gonna lie. For the price I paid for this manifold, which I think was 350 bucks, it is really not too bad. We'll see how it holds up, you know, but hey, it was $350. What do you expect? I'm happy with the way it looks, at least. And then we have a Summit's Finest. Actually, I don't think this one came off Summit. I think they were out, and I had to order this one off the interwebs, eBay maybe. But it's same wastegate, China wastegate, 100 bucks on Summit, 100 bucks on eBay, whatever. It's a tile knockoff. I really do wish I could have put a good new tile on here, and normally I would encourage anyone doing this to spend the 280 bucks and buy a real tile wastegate. However, I know y'all aren't gonna do that, so I wanted to go with the cheap wastegate too, so I could just show you what living with this is really like. If you do decide to go with this cheap wastegate, make sure and run water to it. If you do not, it will get hot, and it will seize up eventually and blow up your motor. Not that I would know about that personally, but let's just say run brand name wastegates, and if you're gonna run cheap wastegates, at least plumb them all the way correctly, and just keep an eye on it, because it will blow up your stuff, trust me. Then, to get all that freshly moved air into the engine, we have all the required 3-inch intercooler piping, all the couplings, vacuum hose, of course, to attach the wastegate and blow off valve, all that. We have a water to air intercooler, couplings to make that work, ice water tank, remote fill cap, all the associated fittings, the pump, a switch to run the pump, the hoses required for that to run from the tank to the pump, to the intercooler. Then we have on the air side again, we have of course the blow off valve and the adapter fitting for it. And then to get the exhaust out of that turbo, we have a wonderful 3.5-inch down pipe and a dump tube for our tile wastegate. Just to even hook all this stuff up, you need quite a bit of hose. You gotta have 6 AN for the coolant lines on the turbo. You gotta have 4 AN for the coolant lines on the wastegate and the oil feed on the turbo. And then you gotta have 10 AN for the oil drain on the turbo. And of course the bung that goes into the oil pan for that oil to drain back into. You also got to have the splitter block and all on the back of the car, but we've already got that. So you got to have a way to split the oil off down there, sort of like that, but we've already got one of those, so that won't be a problem. I'm just going to pull one of those gauges out, and or one of those sending units out, and use that for my feed. But you have to have all the proper adapters and whatnot to make that happen. Like this one, I think required these 1/8 adapters, so you got to have everything in order to do this. It's a whole lot of little bits, bobs, and pieces that you don't really think about till you go to do it, but it all adds up. Also got a boost gauge and sending unit for it. That way we can keep an eye on how much boost we're making on the dash. Also have a 4-bar map sensor so that we can send the correct reading of boost pressure to our Haltech. It's not one of these cheapo sensors, it's just in this box. make sure and get you a good map sensor. You really need to know that. I went with this style that just goes on top of the throttle body because I'm not trying to make that much boost right now. But if you are, go with like an AEM 5 bar. They're only like 80 bucks if you get the brass one, and they're just a much better sensor, or at least they used to be. I haven't ran one in a while. You gotta have colder plugs. I like these right here, 2669, which is a BKR9 EIX. It's just a Iridium 9 NKG. There might be a better plug out there, I don't know. This is just what I've always used. I like them, they work good. I know how to tune around them, so that's what we're gonna go with on this. Injectors, because you got to be able to supply fuel to this thirsty new engine now that you got all this air being crammed down it. And we have a set of Deechworks 2200 cc injectors, all the associated wiring, everything to go with those. Man, those are some big dog injectors there. 2200 cc's. Probably a little larger than I needed to go with, obviously, but I didn't want to have to buy 2 sets of injectors, and these injectors cost more than this car cost me originally. So I just wanted to put a good set in it that would take us, you know, all the way to where we were trying to go with this thing. Also got a nice cheap Amazon fuel rail, but this is about it. This is pretty much everything you need to safely turbocharge a car. There might be some other stuff that I've left out here, but I think this is pretty much it. I also got this fire extinguisher and a mount for it that we've had. I just need to put it in the car, and so I went ahead and got it out too. But this is pretty much it. I'll go ahead and break down the prices on all this stuff. This turbo right here costs $700. Billet wheel, ceramic dual ball bearing, you know, like Gen 2, China's finest, and they are $700 all day long, no matter which one you go with. Not a bad price for that turbo, considering if it was an American-made turbo, this would be like a $2,200 turbocharger bare minimum, so save some coin there. Same with this manifold. If this was a US fabbed manifold, even a cheap one would be $1,200 to $1,400, and it was only $350. So $700 in the turbo, $350 in the manifold for $1,050, $100 in the wastegate for $1,150. You got your Deechworks injectors. Those were $850. A cool $2,000 already. We spent $2,000 and all you got is a turbo, a wastegate, a manifold, and some injectors. Plugs, map sensor, another $100. This was all really cheap. It was like 50 bucks, or actually I think it was less than that. We'll call it $21.50. Boost gauge was $20. This piece right here I think was 10 bucks. I didn't have these, so I had to buy those. I already had the hose, so we'll call all this together an extra 50 bucks and call it $2,200. Blow off valve, this adapter, all this together was only $92, so we'll call that 100 bucks, $2,300. I already had the 6AN hose. I didn't have to buy it. It came with my fuel cell. I had to buy these adapters. I think they were like $10 or $12. And they are to adapt the coolant line from the AN to the rubber hose that's on the car, so I can attach it to the existing cooling system. I had to buy the 4AN kit. I think it was $40 with all these other fittings and stuff I had to have. It was over 60 bucks, I'm sure, in hoses and fittings and stuff like that. So we'll call that $23.60. This dump tube was $35. So $30, so that makes us $23.90. This right here was $60, which brings us up to $24.50. Now, the intercooler kit. I bought this whole thing as a kit, shipped delivered to my door, was $500. So that is not bad, you know. It's not the prettiest thing in the world, but it does not look bad at all, considering I paid 500 bucks for all this. Can't really complain. So that right there brings us up to $29.50. And then with the cost of this piping kit, this is a really cheap piping kit. I think it was $100 because it's not very big. Obviously it's all just small pieces and small couplings because we don't have a lot of real estate. We're not going very far back here. This kit was $100. It came straight out of China. It took weeks to get here. and also got a bung for the air temperature sensor, so I can put that in there. And yeah, $100, bringing us up to $3,050. That is for every piece of vacuum hose, fuel hose, every sensor, everything you need. I know that's a lot of money. Last time I did this was like 2007, 2008. And a whole kit then cost about $2 grand, $2,100. And I was using a little bit nicer parts too. I obviously had a Garrett turbo and whatnot. It wasn't a ball bearing or anything. It was a journal bearing. But, you know, I was still 600 into a turbo, and this whole kit only cost 2,100 back then. So, or $2 grand back then. And that was with nice injectors. Injectors cost a little more back then. So it all comes out in the wash. But to do it today, a good turbo kit with just a $700 turbo, right? We're not setting the world on fire. That's a cheap turbo. With a $700 turbo, you're looking at $3 grand to turbocharge your motor, considering that you already have the ECU, the wideband, everything else that you need to do it, right? So not a cheap investment, but definitely worth it, because it's going to more than double the power on this here stock K24A. And by the time we're done, I bet this turbo right here will probably push that engine well over 600 horsepower. As far as we want to go with it, maybe even a little too far. We'll have to find out. So let's go ahead and get started putting this thing on. I've already got the throttle body off. I went ahead and sealed up all the empty ports in that, removed the IACV and anything else that could leak under boost. We got to get this manifold off so that we can start test fitting that and see how long our lines need to be. I got to make a bunch of lines, obviously a bunch of brackets to hold the intercooler up. I want to put it like right in here if possible. Water tank over here somewhere. We'll probably need to go ahead and take the rear bumper off. So let's just go ahead and get started on all that right now and see what we can get done today. Let's get this bumper off so we can see what we're actually doing back here. A lot of people, or not a lot of people, I think one person said something about the VR6 in the background back there. That's not my VR6, that belongs to my brother, and it is a really cool car and all, but unfortunately I believe he is getting ready to sell it. So according to him, he wants to make some real power. And you know, you can't do that with a 6-cylinder or a 4-cylinder for that matter. So I think he's going to be stepping it on up to the good old world of 8 cylinders. Maybe a Coyote. Who knows? I'm trying to push him Coyote. We got a lot of LS stuff around here, a lot of LS parts, so you might end up going LS. But we want to try something new. You know, we're all about trying new things over here. That's why we're doing this. A lot of people just like to build what they know. We, around here, we just like to try new things out, man. And a lot of them don't work, but hey, that's how you learn. It's by trying new stuff. You don't ever try anything new, you don't ever learn anything new. Like I told y'all before, this car has been smacked more than once. But once really good from this side. Good enough to total it. Good enough to total it in like 07, so. This car's only 5 years old then, so to be able to total it out at 07, it had to be pretty bad. Oh, with the bumper. Oh, forgot about my switch. You can see I already got the downpipe off. I took off the downpipe, pulled out the wideband, and took the throttle body off, all to just get prepared for all this, and to make some measurements and things like that. So now all I gotta do is get off this old exhaust manifold, and then we can test fit our turbo. So let's do that now. Tight fit. Well, it'll turn. It looks like it would fit. I don't know if I can make the turn because of the motor mount bolt. Oh no. That's not good at all. That's like really, really bad. It's got just enough clearance. I mean, it literally has just enough to clear. I know it does because I measured it. So I was hoping I could just bolt it on there fully assembled like it was, but it appears not. I don't know if it's actually gonna hit this mount. There's a good chance it might. And if so, I'm gonna have to do a little bit of modification. My plan would probably be to just lower it down because it's barely touching it, right? So if I just put like a 1-inch drop and come back up right here, it wouldn't really affect the geometry of this. It is not, you know, the best to not have a straight line right here pushing back. But if I drop it down to right there, as long as it's perfectly in line with that bolt, I don't think we'll have any problems. So that could net me almost an entire inch, but I'm gonna try to make it work without it. For the turbo setup, I'm just gonna have to take the turbocharger off and the wastegate off, bolt the manifold on, and then see if I can bolt the turbo on. I don't think it's gonna work, but maybe it will. It's so close on this edge that there might be a little gap. I don't know, but even then it might be too close. So we'll just have to see. Let's see if I have to notch it. But let's go ahead and try to bolt the manifold on there separately, and we'll just bolt it on piece by piece and see how that goes. See, that's not too bad. That fits really nice. That's plenty of room. So I am glad I went with this manifold, even if it does require some additional modification, because that turbo being stuffed over there is just not, I don't think it would really work that well. All right, so I've been thinking about this, and it is just so close. I mean, it looks tight right there, but once you actually get it into position, it's just this very corner, like right in here, is barely touching that bolt right there. So I know this sounds crazy, but instead of redesigning the whole motor mount and all that, I think I'm gonna machine some off this lip. I really do, just because it looks like, you know, if I get it on up in there, it looks like it'd fit. I mean, so I think what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take this up to our local machine shop, then I'm gonna have them knock about 4/10 of an inch off this 400 thou, and like, yeah, it's gonna remove that lip. It might affect the way you could mount a filter on it, but this isn't a street car. It's never gonna get a proper filter. It's only gonna have a turbo guard, and if I take off 4/10, I'll still have enough for my turbo guard. So I know it's like a big move to go ahead and start machining on a turbo like that. I don't know what it's going to change, what it could do, but I don't foresee it causing that many problems. You know, it's only going to take off a little bit. So I think I'm going to carry it up there and have it machined and go that route, because even if I do need to change this mount, it wouldn't hurt to have this a little bit shorter. And we're just going to remedy all these problems in the future, because we won't be using this manifold, right? Like, this style of manifold is great. I plan to build the next one as a ram horn style. I'm just going to shift it that way just a hair. You know, when I build one custom for this car, this won't be a problem. This one's actually made for a FA2 Civic, I believe, which is why it hits this mount. So, but anyways, let's go ahead and get this sucker machined on up and see if we can't make it fit without having to modify our car anymore. Next order of business is to get this water to air intercooler core mounted. There is enough room here, but just barely. I went ahead and took off my lines to my catch can. I may even have to move the catch can because I don't know if I'm gonna have enough room for the cold side to come up. I guess we'll see. But the only thing I really see that could block this from fitting in this hole is that right there. I'm gonna have to do something about this. It's gotta either be turned down a little bit or something. I'm gonna try to reuse this factory one, but as you can see, it's got a little bit of spots around it. I mean, it is 20 years old. So if I have to buy a new adapter piece and just put a new hose there, it won't be the end of the world. But we're gonna try to make do with what we got and just twist it a little. So let me try to do that, and then we'll see if this will fit. So I took this off. I had to cut a piece off because it actually had a little split in it. So it's gonna be a problem anyways. I could run it like this with it offset a little bit to the side, obviously. I do think that would probably work, but what I'd really like to do is run a solid hose from here to there, and then use this port, which was normally for the top heater hose on a, you know, Honda Acura, and use that to feed this port, which goes to the coolant reservoir. I don't know if there's a problem with that, why they didn't, you know, have it working this way from the factory. Maybe there's a reason, and I just don't know. The ports are different sizes, so I imagine they just didn't want to neck it down. You'd have to use an adapter the same way you would here, so why not just use this one? But I want to get away from this because this is a potential failure point and it's a weird piece. I'm going to save this just in case it doesn't work that way and I do have to end up going back. But we got options. The important part is, though, we now have room for our baby to fit. Look at this. And she fits so nice. So nice. Look at that. So I am tight on that hose over there. Pretty tight, but it's just barely gonna clear. And if I need to, I can run a 90 down. It doesn't matter. I can work with that. I think I can get up high enough anyways right there to get over it. The only thing is I'm hitting that right there, so I may have to cut that off just so I can get a little more height back there, but that shouldn't be a problem. And then for this part, I am gonna have to buy a 45-degree coupler because there's just no way that I'm gonna have enough room to run a 3.5-inch reducer, a little piece of pipe, and then another coupler. So I'm just gonna get a 3.5 to 3-inch 45 that will fit right there perfectly and make all this much easier. So I got that on order, and I guess I'm just gonna go ahead. I'll attach the bottom hose just so I know how much clearance I need, and then we'll go ahead and start marking up for some mounts for this. For this one, it's gonna be real easy. I'm just gonna tap the side of the shock tower, put a bolt through it. Bam, good to go. For the back one, I'm gonna have to look and see what's back there that I can potentially bolt to. And then I may not even run this one. If I do, I will run it up here to the, catch can. And I am gonna have to notch right here on this catch can bracket. It's not structural or anything, but I'm gonna have to take that corner out so that my boost pipe can fit through there. And so my cold side's gonna come off here, over the top and back in. That just seems to be about the easiest way to do it. I mean, maybe I could fit it through over here, but then I gotta make this tight turn. So I'm gonna run it over the top of this battery box because I think that'll be the easiest way. So let's go ahead and get working on that now. So, made some major progress. A lot of this happened off camera because it's just monotonous stuff, but I'll go ahead and run you through everything. I made these brackets, took a couple tries on this one, got them all painted up, good to go. All I have to do is mark for my bolt on that one, and it'll be good to go. The one in the back is already mounted up and good. I'll have to take this out one more time to do a little more plumbing, but otherwise good to go on the intercooler. I also have some 90s for it, so that I'll be able to get water in and out of it easily. I replaced this radiator hose down here with a flex hose, thus doing away with that guy. And instead, I'm gonna come right out this front port right here that used to be used for heater hoses. I went ahead and got all the adapters that I'm going to require. The one to size down off that heater hose to run over to my expansion tank, the two for the turbocharger, and the two for the wastegate, and my little piece of hose to adapt that to that other male port on the head. I also went ahead, I got 400 thou. For those of y'all rough at math, that's 4/10 of an inch taken off the end of this turbocharger in hopes of making it clear. And I'm going to show you in just a sec. I think I might have worked something out. I also went ahead and got a AM 5-bar wideband sensor screwed right into my throttle body because it's 1/8 NPT. And I went ahead and wired that up as well with their crazy plug they got. Pretty much got all that done, bunched up, buttoned up on it. And now it's just time to make that turbocharger fit. As you see, a little bit of modification to the motor mount was required. Still a decent amount of metal on that side. I ended up cutting this much off of it, which doesn't look like much. This mount is just to stabilize it from it rolling backwards. You know, when you mash the gas, it doesn't actually hold the engine in the car as far as like supporting it. When it's just sitting here, I was able to take all this off, you know, by hand. There was no force on it at all. Generally, this wouldn't be a problem. However, when I measured, I knew this would, or I thought this would fit because I thought this flange was straight. It's not. It's slightly canted this way. And so because of that, it causes the turbocharger to be further out this way, which makes it just clip the edge of this, right? Because the end sits right here. So I had to cut off the very end of that, and it's still right there. But it does appear that I'm going to be able to fit it. I also had to persuade this side a little bit with my 12-pound persuasion tool. That way I would be able to fit a turbo guard in front of it. But it looks like it is going to fit. So I almost didn't want to do all this. I was going to just redesign the bracket and start from scratch, but I figure it's not worth it because I'm going to redesign this manifold soon, and the mounting system's fine. So whenever I do that, I'm going to keep this piece. I'll probably even reattach it so it'll give it some extra support down there, and we'll just go on about our merry way. I figure it'll be easiest to reverse, and it is tight. I'll show you in just a second. It's really tight, but we can go ahead and get this thing on there, get it mocked up so I can run all the piping for this intercooler and get a good idea of where everything needs to go. If there's any other brackets I have to trim or anything else I have to modify. I'm just trying to figure out where everything's going to be and a plan to get it there, and then we'll start the final assembly all on camera. I got one in. I promise you, it does fit. It's just really tight. You see, once I get it in there, I can make sure this motor mount's far enough over. Like I said, I did give it just a few persuasion taps. Very, very gentle persuasion taps. So there it is, all bolted on. It does fit. It's very, very tight. You can't tell because of that plastic cover. You can kind of see how it's like pressed on it and coming out, but it actually does have a slight bit of clearance. I mean, a slight bit of clearance. With a turbo guard though, it will have no clearance at all. It will sit on that mount, but I don't think that's going to be a problem because, like I said, it cannot move this way, right? It does have good clearance right there, so it's not going to hit this one probably. And this should move with the motor. So if it moves with this, it should be fine. The only real thing to worry about would be not getting enough air, but it's hollow. So that's not really a problem. It's just more like a bar right there, which I don't like, but I think it'll be fine for the amount of power we're trying to make with this setup. So I'm at least gonna try it. If it's a big deal, we'll just go ahead and redesign the motor mount because I don't even have to take the turbo off to do that. I can take the battery box out, take this mount loose, and we'll just redesign it, right? Move all this over to here, make that part straight, and then all these problems go away. Might end up doing that anyways eventually. We'll just have to see. But for now, it's in position, and we can go ahead and start to measure out all of our coolant lines, our oil feed line, and our oil return line, which means, you know what else is coming up? We have to pull off and tap ye oil pan. So that's big fun. Well, let's just go ahead and get started measuring out these lines so we can get all that stuff made now, and then we'll move on down to the underside and take off that pan. So I got the oil pan pulled off this puppy, and I just got to get it drilled out so I can use this. Now, I've never used one of these before. I've always welded the bung on. I've only done this a handful of times actually. So I know that most of y'all at home probably don't have access to a welder, or even if you do, you're not going to want to weld on your pan. So you're probably going to opt for one of these as well. So I figured I might as well give it a try. Don't know why it wouldn't work great. I mean, should be fine as long as you don't take it off. Should never leak. We'll find out. If it does give me a problem though, I do have one that I can weld on. So not a big deal. We'll just go ahead and weld one on our spare pan whenever we service that engine. Want it to be just barely there. Got it all cleaned out. Got my perfectly sized hole drilled. So we're just gonna slide that on in there like so. And then attach the piece on the back. Throw the gasket on the back side. We should just be able to tighten it right on up. Let's see how this does. got it cinched down nice and tight. Now all I gotta do is RTV the pan back up. Already cleaned off the block. If I was gonna run it any considerable amount of time, obviously I'd clean it a lot better, but I'm just gonna hit it with the Scotch-Brite a little bit and let it ride because it's only gonna be on there for a little while. And then we're probably gonna be putting some pistons and rods in this thing. So let's go ahead, get it siliconed up and throw them back on the car. Got it all RTV'd up with that ultra gray. Gonna slap it back on the car so we can go back to the work of actually installing the turbo kit. So I went ahead, I decided because of where this turbo is located right here, right between the rear tires, there's gonna be a lot of stuff that gets kicked up. So I picked up Amazon's finest $30 Turbo Guard knockoff, and everything's good except for it won't fit because of the thickness right here. It actually does clear on the front face of it. So my option was to either notch the motor mount more, which I'm not really willing to do, or you can see where it's hitting right there. I can just take a little piece out of this right here. And since it's a $30 Turbo Guard from Amazon, we're gonna try that. That's why I went so cheap, so that we could do a little bit of R&D and see if there's a way to squeeze this in there. I think we're ultimately just gonna have to build our own manifold, but hopefully this will be a quick fix to get us by. After much trimming, testing, and adjusting and trimming some more, I think we landed on something that'll work. I got a little notch for that corner because it's so tall right there. However, I think it will clear no matter what, but that's just to be safe. The most important thing is this right here. That I had to take out the plastic all the way across. I had to take one screw out of it because I didn't want something that could come loose and go in it. But it's still good and sturdy. It doesn't move at all. So I think we're going to be just fine. Not to mention the motor mount will apply some pressure right there, I'm sure. So let's go ahead and get this thing bolted on for the last time. I'm telling y'all, this is a tight fit. Tight fit. Alright, so after quite a struggle, it's finally on there. I hate I got anti-seize all over everything, but what can I do? I guess it'll cook it off. Right before I turned the camera on to film that clip, I had just slid it on there and it went right on. It fit so easy. I was like, okay, perfect. I'll coat everything in anti-seize, film this next clip. I go to slide it on there, it just didn't want to go, but it's on there now. Got the drain line secured, got that all on there good, tightened up on both ends. Turbo Guard is on there, baby. It's not going anywhere, that's for sure. I did have to trim it, as you saw, but it's on there, and you could even wiggle this mount before I tightened it down, so it's not under tension when it's in position. The problem is it doesn't fit until it's like all the way up, so quite hard to get it in position. But now that it is, we're gonna go ahead and do the hot side, run the exhaust for the turbocharger, and put on the wastegate and run the dump tube. That way all this will be done over here and we can just go ahead and move the cold air that way. I got these two new pieces off the Amazon. Each one I think was $40. Also got a set of V-band clamps. This piece right here, my original thought was to put this like that and then run my 90 with the O2 bung in it off of that. Problem is, not only would I have to notch this bracket right here just a hair to make it fit, that's not really a problem. But the wastegate, the coolant ports sit right there. So if I did that, I would not have any room at all for the coolant ports. I mean, look how tight that is. And I gotta be able to fit two of them on there. This one's already gonna be tucked in that little groove right there. For this one to clear, it just will not work with that 45. So instead, my plan of attack is gonna be to use this shorter, straight 90 piece and then attach my flex elbow with the O2 bung right there, coming straight down. I got all that bolted in place, just like so. And it doesn't look too bad. It looks pretty good from out here. Gets it all away from the intake, moves it over here under the car, and then I think my plan as of right now is to go ahead and bolt on the 45 like so I can shift it just a little closer to the ground, get it around that bumper, whatnot. Might even go with a little bit of an angle. Not really sure yet. Let's see. what works best, but we can go ahead and reinstall this. And as you see, now we have room for all of our lines. So if I turn this like so, it will fit on the flange with the AN fittings on there. Like I said, it's in that little gap. It's very tight, but there is room all the way around it. It doesn't touch. This one has plenty of room. I can swap to a 90 if I need to. So we're gonna be good to go there. Let's just go ahead and get all this bolted down so we can keep on moving forward with the process. All I have to do now is attach this, and that will be the entire hot side, this extra long dump tube. See, if I put that 45 on there, it'll come out about perfect with that, and that will put our exhaust out all at the same spot, which I like personally. And that'll be the end of the hot side. So I got the exhaust all attached, and it looks pretty sick. Look at that. Got the dual exit right there. I think that's gonna work out perfectly, at least for the short term. I'm actually really happy with how this came together, and our final exhaust will probably look a lot like that, unless I decide to take it straight out the back of the bumper, which I may do. But since we got that situated, we can move on. I was gonna do the plumbing next, but then it hit me. We do need to go ahead and swap plugs, and I know if I don't do it now, I'll probably forget. So this is a BKR9EIX. It's part number 2669 NKG, and that's the plug for a K series, right? I run the same BRK plugs in my Honda. I just don't run a 9, obviously, because it doesn't need that cold of a plug. But since we're going turbo, we need a nice cold plug. People say not to gap iridium plugs, but you got to check them and you got to gap them. Just be really careful with them because you can break them. They're usually pretty close to like 30 thou right out the box. And that's probably where I'm going to set these to start. So I probably won't have to gap them, but you still need to check them. So let's go ahead and get all these thrown in there now. I went ahead and I fabricated this plate out of a piece of 1/8" sheet metal. This will bolt to the cross member on one side and the bumper support on the other. And it will hold our ice and water tank. All I have to do is go ahead and bolt that in place and go ahead and cinch down all these that we're not going to be using. I'm going to use this one, and I believe this one, but I have to use a 90 on this one. So we're going to order that off the Amazon. Just go ahead and install that one and have everything good to go otherwise. There it is, all bolted in all the way. Good and sturdy, definitely not going anywhere. Mounted down nice and solid. Now we can go ahead and start working on this charge pipe so we'll know where everything's going to be so that none of our plumbing for all the coolant or oil or any of that stuff gets in the way. I got my reducer coupling bolted onto my turbo to a stainless 90, straight to another 90, to my blow-off valve where it sits right above the battery. I think that's going to work really well. Now we just have to get this mounted so I can plumb from the other side. I've been dreading this part, but it's time to make it happen. I finally got this coupling, this 45-degree coupling cut the exact way I need it. So now it's just all time to line it up and bolt it down. I just got to get from here to here. And the only problem I have in doing so is that my pipe, although I can make it fit through here, it won't fit at the right angle because of this corner. So I'm just going to take the Sawzall. I'm going to go ahead and nick off this corner right here because we don't need it anyways. And while I'm back here cutting stuff, I'm also going to cut this old muffler hanger off as well because there's no need for it and it's all up in the way. So we're going to go ahead and cut this and this right now so that we got room for this pipe. Look at that. Now that I got that edge trimmed off there, nice perfect fit, gives me some adjustability, some room to move it around a little bit. I am going to raise that back corner up also. I noticed that's sitting a little low, so I'm going to jack that up. Alright, so this is the layout that I've decided on. I ended up swapping to the long 90 right there instead of the sharp 90. The sharp 90 did put it at the perfect angle as far as like putting the blow-off valve right. I could put it straight up and down and whatnot.
However, it left me about 1 inch short right here, whereas with the long one, it is actually the perfect length when I pop all this together. I just don't have it pushed together right now because I have to take it back apart to mount my temperature sensor. I completely forgot about this. And before you start punching in the comments, I already know it needs to go post intercooler. But the only spot post intercooler, is that coupling right there, that the 3.5 to 3 inch 45 that goes over to my throttle body. So that's not really an option. So that really only leaves this spot here, which is right before the intercooler. I know I'm just gonna have to adjust it for how much I think the intercooler is taking out, I guess, when I'm tuning it, but it'll be all right. I'm just gonna put it right here at a little bit of an angle. And so I'm gonna go ahead and mark that now with my drill, take it back apart, drill it out. And also, I had gotten this bung, this aluminum bung for this so that I could weld it onto the charge tube, was my original plan. However, look at that, wrong threads. So I am gonna have to put a bolt on this to keep it in place, which even more makes me want to put it right here. That way, if for some reason the nut on the back side of this comes off, it can't get sucked up in the engine. It'll get trapped in the intercooler, and that'll be the end of that. So let me go ahead and drill this out now so I can assemble this charge pipe for the last time. And we will move on to routing up the intercooler water lines for the intercooler pump to the water tank. So I got my 1/2 inch NPT to 3/4 inch barbed 90-degree fittings. Those came in for the intercooler water tank. I also got my AN lines made up, 5 total. Here's 3 of them. 2 of these are for water. This one right here is for the oil feed for the turbo, coming right off that little spot right there on over to the turbo. So these I'll explain to you more as we get deeper into it, but I got these little adapters on this end to convert over to regular hose so that I can plumb it on into the existing cooling system. And the 6AN ones for the turbo, it will go right there. 4AN one will go right there. These are the 2 feeds for the cold side. We're gonna have 2 for the hot side as well, and I'll show you how that's gonna plumb into the factory system. Now that I got my hard lines on there, my AN lines on there, I have to actually convert it over to the cooling system itself. And what I have to do that is just a couple of splices here. This hose right here comes off the cold side of the heater core down here, the little tee off for it. So this goes on that tee off right there. 1 to the turbo, 1 to the wastegate, onto the coolant reservoir. Same with this one. It's got this big end on it here. Because I'm swapping over to use that front heater hose port off the head, it did have a barb, like a little T fitting on the main radiator hose coming off the head right there. But I swapped to a straight flex hose to do away with that little union. And instead, I'm going to try to run off the front and see if that works. It might not. I have no idea. But same concept there. 1 to the turbo, 1 to the wastegate, and then continue on down to our coolant tank. I did pick up an extra coolant tank too, just in case I needed it in the future, so I wouldn't have to worry about that. But let's go ahead. I'm going to get all this thrown on there. Okay, got all my lines assembled and on there. You can see a little bit better now what I'm talking about, how it just comes straight off the port on the head, straight forward, and it'll tie in right here to this line, which goes to our reservoir tank. Same with this other one right here, which also comes off our reservoir tank on the top, and it will just loop right back around to the start of this one right here, and that'll be it. And that'll be all of the plumbing required for the cooling of the turbo and of the wastegate. All right, so a fresh set of Deechworks 2200 injectors, biggest ones they make. Not gonna lie, this was quite an investment. These injectors cost more than this car did originally for me. So yeah, but you gotta have fuel. You don't want to cheap on your injectors. You gotta have good injectors. You gotta keep them clean. Otherwise, you will have a blown up motor. Not enough fuel equals detonation. So if it goes lean, it dies. So we got brand new DeechWorks 2200s, and we're gonna pop them on in there so we can put this new rail on our engine. We got all our injectors mounted in our new fuel rail, new O-rings on them, lubricated up. Let's go ahead and drop this puppy in and pray that it doesn't leak. So I got the new fuel rail mounted up in there, bolted down good, all plugged in. I just went ahead and strapped my harness to the back of it since it doesn't have any holders for the wire loom like the factory one did. But I got that secured good. I've also got fuel pressure sensor in there, good to go. All I gotta do is wire it up. Big update. I came down here the other night. I got to cutting the hoses for this so I could try to mount this water pump for the intercooler. I just got carried away. I didn't have my camera with me, but I put on every hose I could find. I got a lot done. So I went ahead, obviously as you saw in the last clip, I got all this plumbed up, good to go. I also ran the hoses and put on all the clamps for this. This is where the pump's gonna sit. I'm about to strap it just like that right there, so it won't be able to move all the way up to our intercooler. And then off the top of the intercooler right there, on over down to right here. It's gonna dump in that top one right there. That'll be the water system for the intercooler done. I also went ahead and ran the vacuum lines. This one right here comes all the way up, over, and it just shares, I know you're not supposed to tee off the blow-off valve, but it only goes to this sensor, right? Nothing else actually uses vacuum, so just a dead end to that sensor. That's the blow-off valve. You got to use one on this side of the throttle body, obviously, so it functions correctly. And then on my pre-throttle body, my charge side, I have this one. I don't know if you can see it down there. It's kind of hard to see, but it's right there. You can probably see that clamp. And that line is this line right here that comes all the way over and around. And it goes to the bottom of our wastegate, like so, just like that. And I'm just gonna leave the top open for now because I don't have a boost controller yet, and I'm just trying to run it on wastegate to make sure everything's correct at the moment before we start monkeying around with all that. But that'll be all the plumbing done. That's all the coolant hooked up, everything plumbed in, connected with all my lines to the top and bottom to the tank. The air temp sensor tapped and installed, as you saw. I went ahead and connected the fuel line. It's all hooked up, good to go through there. So all I have left to do is to wire up that fuel pressure sensor down here to these two wires right here. And I got a couple more wires. These are just for gauges though, so we can go ahead and fire it up without those. I have to wire up the intercooler pump. I'll probably go ahead and do the gauges, the intercooler pump and all that. And then I went ahead while I was at it and I removed this lid and took this gasket off that was all pinched up and super thin and just put a Beta RVT all the way around it, bolted that back down because I was having it leak out the front. Every time I would slow down, it would slosh out of the little gap that was here. You could physically see a wrinkle in it. But we got all that removed. It's all nice and flat now. Good to go. So we're gonna be filling it up with this here E85 that I filled with stabilizer and everything. And I believe we're gonna be firing this thing up very, very shortly. So let me go ahead and wire up the rest of this stuff and we'll start filling it up. I'm so pumped. Finally getting ready to fire this thing up. Filling it up with ethanol. This thing has been a grind, man. You know, I don't have a whole lot of time to work on it. I kind of just have to work on it when I have time. But it's come a long way. I'm pretty impressed. You know, it was only a year ago that I got this car. So in 1 year, we've managed to K-swap it. Now it's turboed, about to fire up the first time, and I don't know, maybe like another week or two to type some loose ends and we'll be back at the track. So I got everything terminated up, good to go. All the wire loom ran, all the wires connected. Everything should be good, but I did notice one small problem. My pump is not gonna be able to get any prime like this, obviously. So I did order, when I ordered this, I ordered it with the remote reservoir fill cap. I did plan to use this because this is a really nice billet remote fill cap with 3/4 inch tube ends on it. So I plan to use this for another project that I had going on that I haven't showed y'all yet. but it looks like it's gonna have to go right here so that I'll have the ability to prime my pump. So I am gonna go ahead and connect that. I'm also gonna clean up all my tools and the half of a Harbor Freight franchise I seem to have opened up under my car. Just get everything cleaned off of it, ready to go. I can't quite drive it yet because I have to, like, you know, put wire ties on all this, tie everything down so nothing gets caught and twisted up. But it is good enough that we should be able to start it and make sure everything works. So I went ahead and wired up the two-step, just everything's wired in. So we should be able to go ahead and fire it off and see what we got. I got everything cleaned up, and as you can see, I did have to move this pump down to underneath the tank. It did work with it up here with this remote cap on there. However, every time I turned it off, it would lose prime. I would have to open the cap, pour water in it to reprime it to turn it back on. So that's not gonna work. It's not gonna stay in this position permanently. Obviously the bumper comes down right here and would hit it. I am gonna move it further up under here. I just have to drill some holes in this plate to mount it to. But the main thing was I need like another 6 inches of hose and I don't have it right now. So I'll have to pick that up in the morning, which will allow me to move it further up under there and get it where I want. Nice and out of the way, but still up and above the subframe, so we should be good. But for testing purposes, this should work since I'm not putting the bumper on it right now. So that's it. That's every loose end tied up, fuel pressure, sensor wired in, everything wired up. I still, like I said, have to tie down the wires, but otherwise we are good to go. So without further ado, let's go ahead, punch a few numbers on the laptop and turn a key. I got all my settings update. I had to manually key in all the dead times and flow rates for the injectors because they did not have the presets in there for the particular injectors I went with, which were Deepsworks 2200s. I also had to go ahead and change a bunch of stuff on here. I had to change the launch control over to the brake switch. Had to swap over to turbocharged instead of naturally aspirated. Had to change to E85 fuel. Had to set up the fuel pressure sensor. Just a whole bunch of stuff. But we're all good to go. We're up there. Got our new map sensor calibrated and wired in. Everything's good to go. And I think the time is finally here. Let me step back. I'm going to throw you all on the tripod. And we're going to turn this thing over for the first time. Moment of truth. First fire up with the turbo on E85. I've never seen that before, y'all. It blew off the coupler. Like pushed it way up on there too. That's wild. For a second I thought it was water, and I smelled it and I was like, oh Lord. That AM 400 be kicking, boy. I guess it was just cockeyed on there or something. That's the only thing I can think of. Wasn't popped all the way down in. Alright, let's try again. It did crank up though, it did run. So I got the fuel line reattached. Now I got a good puddle of ethanol that we're sitting in. Let's go again. Round number 2. Turbo K24 MR-2, fire up. Here we go.
a good first test. She fires up, she runs good. She doesn't want to idle, obviously, because I removed the idle air control valve and I haven't done anything to the tune to try to make it idle. So, needless to say, it doesn't want to idle. But that ain't a big deal. Runs good. Throttle response does feel a little bit better. Even without messing with the tune, the throttle feels better than it did with that stupid idle air control valve on there. I mean, it made it idle, but I really think that thing was shooting me in the foot a lot. It just, when I go back and look at the maps, there's just craziness all throughout. And the only thing I can think is that thing was opening up, you know, when it wasn't supposed to be. I think it also led to why like the low end performance was so bad, because I would, when I go back through the map, when I was checked to like actually add it on the map, it showed that it was giving it like 100% duty at 1400 RPM. So that's when I'm on the gas. No reason it should be all the way open. I think that was causing a lot of my drivability issues. So hopefully that'll be better. But either way, here it is. It cranks, it runs. I'm not putting it on the two-step yet, obviously. It requires some tuning. I would go drive it around, but I really don't want to get on it too bad, at least till I know how well it's running. And on top of that, it's about to rain like any moment out here. It's looking pretty rough. I know it looks sunny right there. But on the other side of this shop, it was raining all day. So I just really don't want to take it out and risk it this afternoon. However, I will be taking it out this weekend. We're gonna go tune on it. And I'll probably get my brother to help me so that he can drive it or I can drive it while the other one tunes on it. And we'll be good to go. Still got a couple things that I have to address on it. I have to hook up the reference line for the fuel pressure regulator. The reference line to the boost for that, so that it can increase the fuel pressure as the boost pressure increases. And I have to just generally go through and tie up all these wire looms. So it's not really ready to drive right now anyways. But once I go through and get all that stuff tied up, good to go, we'll be ready for the road. So make sure and subscribe, stay tuned, because we'll be test driving this thing out in the very next video. I'm very excited about it. I'm still just kind of impressed. You know, a year ago, essentially, I had no car. And now, here we are, we have car with engine swapped into it and turbocharged. It's a lot of progress to make in a year, considering I work full-time and have 2 kids, and I'm working on this thing for a few hours in the afternoon. I don't think that's too bad. That's pretty good amount of progress to make in a year. So drop a like, subscribe, comment. We'll see you in the next one. We appreciate you all for watching, and we'll see you real soon.